I wanted to spend some time today talking about what ended up being a fairly large announcement this past week coming out of Gamescom, basically, since there was a lot of hands-on time with the PlayStation Portal. We also got the price point and some details that certainly caused a lot of discussion online. And I want to talk about this device as well as kind of the truth around why, well, it is what it is. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe if you're new here to the SpawnWave channel. Today's video is sponsored by Vita. I had a chance to check out their new XR glasses, and what they do is pair with different devices to provide a 1080p 60 FPS screen that takes up your entire room. Setting it up with my Switch was easy with the portable dock. This, by the way, also charges your system. I just plugged the Switch in with a USB-C cable, and I had Zelda playing on a 120-inch screen directly in front of me. Different nosepads are included for maximum comfort, and with dials at the top for each eye, you can lock in a crystal clear picture designed just for you. These are the first XR glasses with tint-changing film, letting you alter the background brightness around you for the best picture quality. Vita partnered with Harman for the audio, and it comes directly out of each side for a clear listening experience without the need for headphones. They also have 3 degrees of freedom that can be turned on, keeping the screen in place as you move around to reduce any shaking. While I spent a lot of time using it with the Switch, you can also set it up for use with your Steam Deck, PS5, Xbox, phone, or cloud streaming apps. The neckband makes it easy to enjoy all types of entertainment on the go, with support for popular apps like Netflix, YouTube, Apple TV, and more. The combination of the neckband and glasses are great for traveling, letting you take a 120-inch screen anywhere you go. After a year of pre-orders, this all-in-one mobile entertainment system is finally here with a special launch price that you can take advantage of by clicking the link in the description below. And enjoy 10% off using the code SpawnWave. Experience the next wave of immersive mobile technology today. First of all, we can take a look over on this is a PlayStation blog showcasing the PlayStation Portal coming in at a price of $199.99. And the biggest thing around this that people look at and see is, okay, it now has technically the initials of PSP, but it's not a PSP. It's not the dedicated handheld device that people tend to want from Sony, and I'll kind of explain why it's just a remote play device here in a bit. But the biggest thing now is this thing is getting kind of crushed online, although I do still see people who are like, hey, this could actually be pretty cool in my use case, because I do think that there is an audience for this. Even though I think it is kind of a smaller audience, all things considered, for the PlayStation 5 like ecosystem, the number of accessories and things that they have, this is one that probably won't be the top seller necessarily. But we did get a lot of hands-on time that took place at Gamescom, where they set them up in the ideal scenario, the best router configuration, everything they could do to make it run as well as it did. And people said genuinely, hey, it was a good experience. Yes, the PS5 was 10 feet from me and wired directly into the router that was like 5 feet from me, but it worked well. And remote play isn't necessarily like a new concept. It's been around since the PS3 days. You could play your PS3 through your PSP, not even like the same house, right? You could be wherever as long as you had a Wi-Fi connection that could go through the internet to your PS3. Yeah, it would work. That was how we played Lair with the joystick, actually, on the PSP. But there were some new details that were shared for the PlayStation Portal, and I gotta admit, not a great look for Sony with this. So 2 major missteps I see with this. The first one has to do with the audio, which, all right, so it has a 3.5mm headphone jack. So yes, you can use wired-in headphones. However, what Sony has done is omit the use of Bluetooth, and in place of that, they have PlayStation Link. There was some confusion around what PlayStation Link exactly is. Some were wondering if it was a proprietary connection from the PlayStation Portal to the PS5. In fact, I was on a podcast the other night on Kofi's channel, and that kind of came up. And PlayStation Link, what it is a proprietary connection for the audio accessories. And that basically comes back to these 2 accessories here. There's a Pulse Elite and a Pulse Explorer. All right, so this is the Elite, and this is the Explorer. You're looking at $150 or $200. Yeah, so what Sony has effectively done is locked you in to using one of these 2 devices that can sync up through PlayStation Link to give you the quote-unquote best possible audio experience. obviously Bluetooth for many people would be preferred as an option, because then you can probably use your nice headphones or earbuds or whatever you have that you would normally use for technically even your PS5, your Xbox, or whatever, right? Syncing through Bluetooth is commonplace on a lot of these accessories. And the fact that Sony is locking it down to PlayStation Link specifically kind of brings me back to the days of the Vita with its proprietary storage. And Sony gave a reason for that existing as well, which was, oh, well, we expect a certain amount of speed from these media cards. Well, we're using SD cards now, and by opening up PS Vita through soft modding, and surprise, surprise, it works fine. So there you go. There was this short that I believe was put out by Marcus Brownlee kind of talking about this device, and he's very plugged in with Apple and all this, and he's just sort of pointed out, hey, this is fairly anti-consumer from Sony's position, because even Apple would do this with their audio setup, and I'll admit, that's pretty eye-opening. The other thing that's a pretty big misstep is at the time of like the release for all the information, and probably the release of this device, as we're still waiting for its date to come to market, no cloud support, specifically for cloud gaming through PlayStation Plus Premium. I feel like that's something that probably will be added down the road, maybe as they get closer to the launch of their Project Chronos setup that they have going on in beta right now, which is supposed to be like their next generation streaming service that goes up to 4K and all of this. And while this is a 1080p screen, you still get the idea of, okay, they can deliver a decent enough picture, and hopefully for response time, to make this a viable option maybe for someone who's either traveling, or who knows, if people are like all in on the cloud, this could be their gateway into the PlayStation ecosystem, which interestingly enough means that you wouldn't need the PS5 system at all to play some of these games. You would buy this device at $200 and you'd be off and running with a PlayStation Plus premium subscription. And that's one of the big things here. While this is, of course, catching a lot of flack online for, well, two of those major things that I pointed out. But the other thing is, it's not a dedicated handheld device. So you do need a PlayStation 5 in order to use this thing. And the way I am viewing this, it's another controller. That's kind of how it's part of their accessory lineup. And because of that, and where they see it in their overall ecosystem, I think $199 is about right for the pricing on it, because it matches up to the DualSense Edge controller, that at $200, and that's the best-selling accessory in the MPD for 2023. So Sony clearly sees that price point hasn't deterred people from buying that controller, and in their mind, this might come off as more of a valuable item, since it has an 8-inch screen directly in the middle between, what's a DualSense kind of chopped in half. The other question I see come up is, why would someone buy this since they can just use their phone and a backbone controller? Well, if you don't have a backbone controller yet, it's $100, so you're already halfway to the portal. But the other thing is, I'm sure there are many people out there who don't want to tie their phone up consistently when it comes to something like this. Locking it into the backbone controller, I mean, you're legitimately locked in to that setup to where you're not really going to be messaging people much, and when text messages do come in, it can kind of mess up your experience, obviously. And you can also have things that are a bit off when it comes to the HUD being fairly small, the text, depending on the aspect ratio that your phone attempts to put out with what's being sent from the PS5. And it's because of some of these reasons that I do think, again, there is a market for this, but it's not going to be very widespread necessarily. And I also see some comparisons to the Wii U for this device, and that just doesn't seem correct at all. The Wii U's concept was to bring the dual screen setup to the living room so that they would work in tandem with your TV and your gamepad, right? Inventory screen, for example, on the gamepad, where the rest of the game is up on the TV. That's not what this is. Technically, it mirrors one aspect of what the Wii U was able to accomplish. That's playing games off of the TV if somebody else was using it. But there was a lot more going into the Wii U. And because the core functionality wasn't necessarily remote play, I just don't think they're very comparable necessarily. I also want to point out that it's incredibly likely that this device will be opened up, soft modded, hacked, anything like that. And a lot of that has to do with it seemingly running Android almost when it was in the factory with some of the videos that got out there. And in fact, I wouldn't be shocked if Bluetooth is on board and it's basically been disabled for PlayStation Link, which that'll be an interesting day if that gets found out. But I mean, even through some of the shell comparisons and things that were leaked out, it looks like what I would expect an Android tablet to be, with the shell on the back and then the two DualSense halves connected on either side. Looks like we even have a little antenna kind of running down around here. So I don't think this device is going to be able to do much if it's hacked and soft mod and all of that. It doesn't need a lot necessarily to do remote play correctly. Like, they're going to have minimal amounts of RAM in there, probably a low powered processor just to get the communication with the PS5 and any kind of encoding over stream done somewhat correctly at that 1080p 60 FPS mark. But the big thing, again, that people ask about is, why isn't this a PlayStation Portable? Why won't Sony go out and make a dedicated handheld? And to be completely honest, I think those days are kind of behind us now. Like, that is the unfortunate truth at this point. Is it's very difficult for any of these major platform holders, Microsoft, Sony, or Nintendo, to hold up two separate ecosystems. Okay, it's not necessarily SKUs, as in the Xbox Series S, the Xbox Series X. Microsoft is kind of running into some issues with that, but they are making it work. Whereas we've seen Sony attempt to have a console and a handheld, and it hasn't necessarily worked the best for them recently. I will say with the PSP, they sold quite a number of those. It was over 80 million. And that, to me, that's a successful handheld generation. They just ran into a situation with it being hacked all over the place. The Vita, however, not great, right? It sold Wii U level numbers. And unfortunately, it seemed pretty obvious that Sony decided to shift a lot of their attention away from the Vita when they saw it lose traction and just went all in on the PlayStation 4. And even Nintendo at this point has thrown out the idea of having two different ecosystems, a 3DS and a Wii U or anything, just combine it all together into one. And I think a lot of that has to do with game development, how difficult it is getting even on the handheld side, where some of those games for the 3DS were, I mean, they were getting close to where the next generation jump would probably be console level, right? So you figure out 3D game development, building and building and building and building. You get to a position where you got to pick one or the other because it's so incredibly hard with these development cycles to continue at that pace to support both platforms. Now, I guess there is the question, could Sony make their own Steam Deck? And right now, they probably could, but I don't think it would be to the level that they would want it to be, considering they would have to shoot for something closer or maybe even slightly better than the ROG Ally. And, well, that's like $700. So unfortunately, I don't think the technology is there currently for Sony to create one with enough storage space and all the bells and whistles for about $400. And I know that's not necessarily what people want to hear. Trust me, I would love to see Sony attempt another handheld like the Vita, because the Vita still feels current now. It'd be pretty interesting to see what Sony could accomplish with sort of their design philosophy with something with current technology. But I will at least give you some hope in the sense that I see these mobile processors evolving rapidly right now. We see things with the Steam Deck, the ROG Ally, Lenovo randomly is going to jump in as well. So I do see a lot of incentive for AMD to continue pushing and advancing with their mobile SoCs. And if Windows gets involved, Microsoft gets involved with Windows, maybe adapting a bit more to that handheld environment, then you could see even more of a push from AMD. And maybe next generation with the PlayStation 6, Sony looks around and goes, you know what? We probably could make a handheld device that would run these games at 1080p on like a handheld device at a decent enough pricing where it's probably still be like $500 some odd dollars, but we could make it happen to where PS6 games could run on a handheld and then also on consoles, right? With all the bells and whistles there, cut down slightly on the handheld side. I think if they were going to do it, though, they don't want a whole other platform. They just want everything to work together with the same games. So who knows? Maybe from this generation to the next, Sony has their own Wii U to Switch moment where they realize that they could do it with the technology available, and they have two SKUs to start out next generation. Not necessarily one that's all digital, but one that's portable. So something to think about there. It would be kind of interesting to see Sony attempt that. But let me know what you guys think about the PlayStation Portal down below. I definitely see a lot of people who are very skeptical of the device online, and the way I would think about it currently is it's another accessory. It's a controller with a screen, and you can pretty much ignore it if you find no use in remote play, and then maybe Sony will get the message that, people would like to play their games locally on a handheld device, not necessarily just through remote play. Thanks, guys, for watching, and I'll see you next time.